Okay, so I'm starting this 6.5 to 1 DSG or 13 to 1 DSG build. You can call it either or either, it's exactly the same thing. I've got some of the parts here. I'm still waiting on quite a few of the parts to arrive, struggling to get them locally, and I don't really want to wait for the longboat from China, but I might have to. So I've got some of the parts here. I'll briefly go over what I have, and then I'll briefly go over what I'm waiting for, and then I'll videotape the build. Hopefully it's going to be a really good build. I haven't done a DSG gear set like this before, so it's going to be very interesting. Probably be a bit of a learning curve. Hopefully I'm not going to have too many feeding issues with the gels, but I guess we'll find out further on down the track. So there's a couple of guys out there already who have managed to achieve 6 to 1 DSGs or 12 to 1 DSGs. So everyone knows Rowan, pretty well known in the gel ball community. He had one a while back. There's Shannon. He's got a YouTube channel called Shaka's Kalaka, I believe. Also he's a tech at Azrael's Armory. So he's got 6 to 1 DSG. He's a really good tech, especially with high rated fire builds. So I'm always quizzing him on things. And there's another guy that I've been talking to that's got a 6 to 1 DSG gear set, but he hasn't actually completed the build yet. So there'll be a few of these getting around. It's not too hard a process to achieve. There's a little bit of fiddling around separating the gear sets. My first attempt at a 6 to 1 DSG, I actually stuffed the drilling up of the 12 to 1 sector. So I had to move on to 13 to 1, hence why it is 6.5 to 1. So yeah, I'll briefly go over the parts and just some things that I do when I build my DSGs, and hopefully something in there that you guys better use. So the gear set, like I was saying before, is 6.5 to 1. So I'll be using the 13 to 1 spur gear with the lower portion of a 13 to 1 sector. So pretty much all you're doing is you're taking the sector gear and you're actually splitting it into two. So you can actually split the sector gear into two pieces like so, and then you take the lower half of the 13 to 1 sector or 12 to 1 sector and you match it with the upper half of the DSG gear set. So you end up with something like that. Then I can utilize the 13 to 1 spur gear instead of the 18 to 1 spur. So it's a little bit fiddly. Like I said before, I messed the first attempt up, but I learned from my mistake, and this one I put it together quite well. So hopefully it stays together. I think vibration may be the enemy of this, but it was a very tight fit. I make sure it was a very tight fit, so I'm hoping it doesn't come apart. Now, just really quick, when you do this, the 13 to 1 sector gear only has that single lobe there, so you won't be able to use a mechanical style MOSFET like a Leviathan because there's only one lobe, whereas a DSG needs two, and also the lobe's in the incorrect position. So yeah, you can only use optical MOSFET, which reads the teeth up here instead of the micro switches counting every time the lobe hits the micro switch. So optical MOSFETs only, hence why I'll be using a Perrin B2 for this. So the gearbox I'll be using most likely will be the MK Tactical Hybrid 92 gearbox. So I've got a one-piece cylinder, and then I've got the Gen 8, Gen 9 hybrid nozzle that suits the V2 style cylinder. So I haven't used one of these before. Be interesting to see how it goes. This one-piece cylinder I got locally, it's a lot better quality than the last one I had. So internally, the milling is really good compared to the quality of the last one. So excited to try this. I'm hoping to get good results out of that. And this is also just a single O-ring nozzle. Now both of these, when I got them, they had little imperfections on the inside lip, so I had to just give them a very light sand. So obviously when they were manufactured, there was something wrong, and there was little imperfections, but I've since got rid of them, so I'm sure this will do fine to start with. O-ring, I'm just going to use a brown O-ring to start off with and see how that goes with FPS, with vacuum, etc, etc. Just got your standard type of anti-reverse latch, nothing big there. The grip, I actually really like the look of this grip, so I'll give this one a crack. It does open a little bit differently, so I'm not sure how the motor will sit with the gearbox and then on the lower receiver, but I really like that, so I want to give that one a crack and see how it goes. Spring choice, so I've got an M170 and I've got an M180 here. So I will be using a MOSFET, and it's not the T238 because there's a pairing in there. So this pairing, this was the one I swapped out for the T238. So instead of buying a new MOSFET, I'm just going to use this one, because the issue I have with the pairings is I find that on semi they don't react fast enough, but because this one is going to be mainly for full auto, that's not going to be a problem. So pairing V2s going in, it'll do the job, no problems. Motor wise, man, I've got this sitting around. I really need to do the calculations to actually work out what the rate of fire might be with this motor and this gear set. And have I got a pen somewhere? Yes. So I'll quickly just do the calculations on what the rate of fire. So what I have here is it's an estimator, and I have it on the rate of fire estimator at the moment. I got this calculator and all these helpful little tools from Seeker Armory Airsoft. So you can go to their webpage, you can go to tools and calculators, and you can request that they send this to you. So they do kind of ask that you don't just generally share it around to everyone, so I'm not going to. But if you want your own copy and they send it in an Excel format, you can request it, and all the info is there that you need to send through to them for the request. So pretty much when we're doing the rate of fire estimation, that's the motor I'm most likely going to use. It's a 20 turn armature and it's 25,000 RPM. So what we do is we put in turns per armature is 20, the gear ratio is 13, and the nominal voltage is 11.1, and then it gives us the output. So that populates automatically as you enter in all the data in here. So optimal rate of fire is 34, pretty much 35 rounds per second, and average rate of fire pretty much 29. But we need to double that because this is a DSG, so let's just say average rate of fire would be 56 rounds per second with that setup. Probably a tad fast. I'm not really looking for that kind of speed, and the reason is because gel balls, well, they're not the greatest projectile or ammunition. If I'm using a 7mm barrel, then because I'll have to use a Gen 8, Gen 9 style T-piece, they're not designed for gel balls that small, and what can happen is you can have jams inside the T-piece where 2 gel balls feed up into the T-piece and they actually jam. So I may have to look at doing some sort of modification to the T-piece to so it suits the smaller diameter gel balls, but I'll just go ahead once I get all the parts, put it together, and then see what happens and go from there. But yeah, if you want this, go to Seeker Armory and do what I said before, and they should send it out to you. And it's a really helpful tool. So piston wise, I haven't got it yet, but I do use the SHS lightweight nylon piston with the metal rack. I'll put a picture up of what I would normally use. I'm trying to source them locally, but I'm finding it difficult. Even the guys that have or would normally stock them, they have no stock in, so I guess the only option I have is to order some from China, and they can come on the slow boat, so it's a bit disappointing. But that's just how it is. Piston head. For this, I'm going to use a nylon or POM piston head similar to this one. I'm not going to use this one, but the one I would normally use is probably about 2 mil thicker than that at the front. So that gives you a couple of options. If you don't have enough play or space between the piston head and the O-ring, you can actually just shave a little bit out here. It's quite simple to do. It's easy to enlarge the holes for better airflow. And if you are making final adjustments to your AOE, if the sorbo pad is slightly too thick, you can actually sand the front of it down, which is what I've done before. So I had the sorbo pad was 1/2 millimeter too thick, and all I did was sand it 1/2 millimeter off the front of the piston face, which was really good. Very simple. They're very lightweight. In the piston assembly, I don't bother with the spring bearings, so that just adds weight. You don't need them. As long as you have the bearings on the spring retainer, that's all you need. It's perfectly fine. You don't need to put them in the piston. What else do I need to look at? So the receiver that I was going to use, I'm still thinking about using it, is the Gen 9 receiver. Now I really wanted to finish off that Gen 9 sleeper build that I was doing with this DSG gearbox. Unfortunately, if you do the cylinder to barrel ratios, if I try and use the standard length barrel, I think it's 320 to 330 mils, somewhere around there. The cylinder to barrel ratio is 1.2 to 1, which is far too low. I'm sure the gel balls almost just fall out the end of the barrel. So maybe the maximum length barrel I could use would be 240, and that might be pushing it. So I might try 240 millimeters and then just work my way back, and then try and find a suitable handguard. May even go with a different gearbox. I might use the first V2 CNC MK box, but I've already got 2 SLRs. I don't really want to do another one, so I guess I'll have to go back to the drawing board and kind of work out what I want to do. And you guys will find out in the next video, I guess, once all the parts arrive.